I got all I want, and I got all I need, and I got everything. I got you and me. All I want, I got all I need.
Marriage is the best. Hey, welcome back to Marriage is the Best. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about having fun. Fun came up because I was reading a book recently called The Love Prescription, and it had this amazing portrayal in the opening of a couple who was feeling really distant and disconnected, and they went and saw a counselor, and it wasn't working, and then one day the counselor said, I want you to go in the backyard and create a mud pit in the backyard and like have a mud fight. And this couple had a child, and the child got wind of this idea and was encouraging the couple to do it. That sounds like fun. And so they went out and they threw mud at each other, and they got all messy and dirty, and they kind of broke the mold for the disconnect in their patterns, in their habits. So they were forced out of their comfort zone. They were able to remember what it was like just to have fun in their relationship. Fun is something I think all of us remember having a lot of early on in our relationship. If you can think back to kind of that honeymoon stage where you are seeing and getting to know them early on, when you have tons and tons of questions about them and their lives and who they are and what they like. It's a blast to get to know your partner, especially early on in that really fun, exciting stage. Early on in our story, Becca and I remember getting to know her through being resident assistants or RAs at our college. And one thing that we found extremely fun was just to be around one another. We were kind of known for our banter. At least I imagine we were known for our banter. No one ever came up to me at that time and was like, hey, you're the banter guy, right? Nor do I think that happened to her. But we did have a reputation for kind of fighting playfully, and she would be incredibly sarcastic and snippy and quick-witted, and I would fire right back at her, or I would say something, sarcastic and what I thought was quick-witted, and then she would like one-up me and like, I don't know, it would just create these sparks it would just create these moments, right, of playfulness. At the time, I took life really, really seriously, way too seriously. I struggled in my ability to have fun, generally speaking, to do things that were fun. I kind of grew up with an idea that fun was immoral in some ways, that like having fun was less valuable, less meaningful to life. And so the things that people at my age and in my stage of life, like the things that they were doing for fun, I chose not to do them because I grew up with that kind of notion. But Rebecca was an incredible, fun, funny, lighthearted person. She was sarcastic and playful in her speech. She was dynamic and fairly charismatic, and she was able to have a lot of fun, which is something that, coming from where I was coming from, was kind of off-putting at first. Not like in the best way, not like in a bad way, but it came into such conflict with who I was at the time. And at the same time that it created tension within me to be around someone so dynamic and fun and quick-witted and all of those things, it also was something I think I was really drawn to, because it was something that I really lacked and was something that was kind of broken inside of me. something that I didn't practice, something that I didn't value, something that I didn't see as valuable. But seeing it like played out in her was really wonderful and attractive, very attractive. I remember there was one time that we hadn't quite decided to date, and we were doing that thing that happens at, small Christian campuses where you're trying to determine the relationship. So you're having all these conversations about that, and then you're trying to do all of these things to decide whether or not it would be good for you to date, and making it so much more complicated and annoying than it needed to be. But we ended up deciding not to date, and then we ended up deciding to date. Fancy that. But there was a moment in our kind of pre-dating, dating phase. It sounds so annoying. I'm annoyed at myself. Oh, bother. So during this stage, we had an RA retreat, as we had them. We did do those things. It was like the winter one. And we went out to this place. It was like a big house, and people were playing, and there was lots of things going on in the house because there's a good chunk of us. And so there were people like all over this basement, right? It was kind of this like big open basement. And Becca and I were sitting, if you could picture it, sitting at this like tall kind of bar height table. And we had taken out, I don't know who did it. Probably wasn't me, but so I would blame Becca. Becca probably took out this game. So she took out Chinese checkers, and we were kind of wrapping up our night. And so we had this kind of open free time where we were connecting and engaging as a group. But Becca and I ended up at this high seated table with a Chinese checkers board in front of us. And we played Chinese checkers. I don't know if we even knew what the rules were to Chinese checkers. I'm not even sure if I can remember how to play it thinking back to it. But we sat there, and we were the only two people in the room. Like, it was one of those kind of surreal moments when it actually does, like, everything fades away. And I have a selective attention thing where I can kind of turn off anything that's around me if I choose to, which is helpful when you're like trying to read and there's chaos going on around you, and less helpful when someone's trying to get your attention and your attention is turned off. But I turned off all of my attention, and it was just focused on Becca. I can remember like people kind of walking up to the table and trying to start conversations with us, but because we were the only ones in this room, and because our attention was so focused on one another, we were just having this back and forth of conversation and play, and it was really, really fun. And I remember finishing our game, and we went over and watched a movie to kind of finish off the rest of the night. And I don't know if that was like the moment that I decided that we could, or we should, or we would like move forward in dating. But it was a really special moment. Even like thinking back on it, it just kind of makes me like, I don't know, there's a touching part of that like that moment was so important to us. And it really broke me out of that shell that I was in of not being able to let go, not being able to let loose, not be able to have fun, not being able to, just kind of break out of myself. And she was so good at it. You know, she was an expert. It came so naturally to her, and it was so refreshing to me. And it's exactly, I think, what my soul needed. So it was a really good moment. It was a really good time. And I am very grateful that we were able to have that fun and to see each other in that moment. Becca brought a lot of fun throughout the course of our relationship. And, one thing that we found early on in our relationship that was super fun for us was just to sit and talk with one another. We were extremely busy in our my final year of college. And so one thing that we did was we just set aside Thursday nights for like night. Like after intramural was over, we would connect like 9 or 10 p.m. and then we would talk for 2 or 3 hours on Thursday nights, and it was so much fun. It was basically just an exploration of each other, developing an understanding of each other's stories, each other's values, the likes and the dislikes, the goods and the bads, the histories. We talked about everything, and we talked for hours and hours and hours. At the end of that year, we were dedicated to spending that time, and it was a lot of fun. It was fun because she is incredibly intelligent, and she is psychologically minded, and she's a deeply enjoyable person to talk with and to spar with and to talk, like go over ideas with. My wife is. That enjoyment of each other, the playfulness and the games and the verbal kind of back and forth, the joking and the teasing and, all of those things have really stuck with us throughout our entire marriage. It's something that continues to come up and be a part of our conversations and our dialogue. We are oftentimes engaged in these fun verbal exchanges where we are kind of just firing back and forth. And it's like a tennis match, like where we're just hitting the ball back and forth and trying to get the last laugh in or the last word. And it's really enjoyable. It's really something that has always been there for us because of, who we are and the way that we're wired, and some of the things that are very similar in our strengths. So that is one way that we have found fun in our lives and been able to keep fun alive in our marriage. Having fun definitely has changed a lot over the course of our relationship, even though there are some things that have stayed the same, like those verbal volleys. There's a lot of things that have changed over time, such as, having a plethora of children. And that obviously changes the way that we interact at times and changes our capacity for interaction, changes the way that we kind of have to have fun. One thing that children definitely do is they have this immense need for time and affection and connection and conversation and play, just like we're talking about having fun in our marriage. Obviously our children need a lot of play and attention in order to thrive and to grow. And so oftentimes our play attention is focused in on the kids, and having 5 of them, there are a lot of buckets that need drops, a lot of drops throughout the days and throughout the weeks. And so the demands of life have demanded a lot of our time and a lot of our energy away from each other and toward the children. But one thing that is unsustainable in marriages generally is to focus on the stress of life, whether you have children or not, whether your stress comes from work or health, or whether it comes from family, whether it comes from a season of life, a struggle, finances. No matter where it's coming from, the stresses of life make it more difficult for us to focus on fun and enjoy our partners and enjoy our spouses. But the enjoyment of our spouse is so important. Taking time and shifting some of our focus and orienting some of our lives to remember to have fun will, in fact, enrich and strengthen our marriages. So pausing to acknowledge some of the stress, right? Knowing the stress, knowing the struggle, knowing how difficult, each of the seasons are in different ways. It's important for us to prioritize fun and enjoyment of one another in order to create that depth of satisfaction in our marriages. And, you know, like what happens in the marriage when you stop having fun? You know, marriages tend to break down when we stop having fun and prioritize enjoying each other and seeing those things that initially attracted us to our partners. I asked some of my friends and clients what they were doing for fun in their marriages, and so they provided some good insight. One of the couple friends that we have that are so dear to us, they live very far away from us, so we never get to see them. But every once in a while, I get to chat with him on the phone, and he was saying that they were finding kind of a renewed sense of fun in their relationship. He chose to watch a cheesy, he didn't use this word, so I don't want to get him in trouble, but he chose to watch a cheesy show. That's my word, not his. A cheesy show with his wife who really enjoyed the show. And then he would just kind of, again, do that kind of verbal volley where he'd just kind of throw things out at the characters or notice things. And obviously he's enjoying the show and he's enjoying her enjoy the show, which is really important. That's something that Becca and I are doing right now. And it was fun to hear him talk about the excitement around having fun together in that way, just by simply sharing a show. You know, another thing that he said that they were doing was kind of just like dreaming together. You know, looking toward the future, looking forward in their lives, and dreaming together and casting a vision for what they want life to look like. They're working on some cool, exciting, like camping related things and trying to live out, you know, some shared values and trying to dream about some shared values that connect them. And that's really fun. It's really invigorating. It's really exciting and enjoyable to continue to look forward and to dream. And I think that that's actually something that in most of our marriages, something that's extremely beneficial is to look forward and to find those things that are really exciting in the future. Finding the things that you're sharing that are exciting, that are in your future. And when you have that, you know, in the future, and then you have a curiosity about your partner's present, and you're working on your current foundation, and you're also casting a vision, right, for the future. So that's really important. I asked our group online, and one of the things that was shared that Becca and I do as well was just sending funny GIFs and memes and things of that nature back and forth. Becca sends me GIFs and memes, not gifts, but like GIFs, however you say that. She sends me things like that all the time. Like recently she sent me a little picture that said, Taco Bell is the only place you can get gas for $1.39, which I thought was very funny. She sends me just funny videos all the time. And we share those laughs, you know, like we were able to connect over laughter, and it's fun for us. It lights up our life and reminds us how much we enjoy each other's sense of humor and the different values expressed in the videos and finding things ridiculous and funny. And so that's a really great example of ways to have fun with your spouse. Other things that we could add to the list would be sharing a meal together, playing a game together, reading a book together. Becca and I really like sharing stories of all kinds. Yeah. So those are just a few different little examples of things that are fun and that we find fun. So remember to take time to enjoy your spouse. Remember to prioritize, to focus on, to open yourself up to the enjoyment of your person. Remember what it was like to, you know, grow up together early on in your relationship, no matter what stage of life you met each other, and what was fun about that, what was exciting about that, what sort of memories you created during that season. As you're searching for fun in your relationship, I think one thing that's really important is to be really curious about your partner and their world and their inner life. oftentimes when we meet our partners early on, there's so much excitement about questions and talking through things and engaging with learning and growing with your partner. And that's something that can be really overshadowed by a lot of the stress that comes into our lives and the different things that call our attention outside of our relationship. And so remembering to be curious, remembering to ask questions, remembering to find out more and more about where your partner is at today. Your partner and their world is an ever-changing landscape. It's something that is constantly updating and changing over time. It's almost as if they are being realized currently, right? And the ups and the downs of their life are creating new topography, as you move forward, as you drive down the road of life together. Topography and curiosity and questions is something that the Gottmans talk about in their book, The Love Prescription, which is it's a phenomenal read, a super small little, if you're looking for just like a jump starter or a Kickstarter, it's such a small little pamphlet, but it's just packed with wisdom, and it's packed with really practical, simple ways to connect with your spouse. So that's a really great way to, it's just to continue to learn, continue to read. Reading actually does have a great impact on marriage. If you just take some time to like learn and grow in some of those things, it would be a great way to jumpstart your fun machine and to just kind of keep going with pursuing one another and engaging with one another. So now I want to answer a question. So what do I do when I'm not having fun? I think that this is actually a really important question. So I want to speak to if you feel like you've lost your ability to have fun in your relationship, what I would say is that sometimes that can be due to a focus on the conflict. So if you've lost fun, there may be a conflict that's unresolvable, a conflict that is gridlocked, a conflict that is stuck, right? That you're stuck in your marriage. And it's making it really difficult to see your person, to see them as well-meaning, or to see them as, on your team, right? Oftentimes, sometimes conflict can make us feel like we're on opposite teams. So if you're struggling through a conflict, I would say that if you can shift your focus away from the current conflict and on to rebuilding your friendship, that is going to be more important, more powerful, a more potent exercise than attempting to continue to resolve the conflict. Now, that doesn't mean that the conflict doesn't need to be resolved, but the underlying friendship and connection that you're feeling does definitely inform the way that you're going to move through that conflict. So if you're feeling at a loss, if you're feeling distant, disconnected, and unable to like have fun, you've kind of lost some of that, that's kind of like shifting the focus away from the current conflicts may be helpful. There's a phenomenal app called the Gottman card decks on the App Store, and it's free, and it's got all of these different areas of questions that you can go into. It's really cool. There's a section in the Gottman card app where there's open-ended questions. And, to just give you a couple examples, it might sound like, what do you want your life to be like in, say, 3 years from now? That's verbatim. How do you see your work changing in the future? How do you feel about your physical home? Any architectural changes you'd like to make? As a new parent, what would you compare yourself to? How would you compare yourself to your own parents? Some of these questions, they just kind of strike at that like discovery, that curiosity that you're going to need. And so if you're finding yourself stuck about the person, you're not finding enjoyment, not finding fun. Sometimes reorienting yourself on and like re-sparking that sense of curiosity and questioning that you had for your partner, and being kind of open to hearing and learning like where they're at currently. sometimes there's a wound in the marriage that leaves it kind of open to just feeling kind of hurt over time. And if there's like a sticking point or a woundedness, if you haven't identified that wound yet with your partner, and your partnership is not an abusive relationship, going to them and identifying the wound if they're unaware, and just making them aware that something was painful or difficult or harmful or wounding for you. If there's something that's unknown, and your partner, we always just talk about it. When we have woundedness in our relationship, it definitely impacts our ability to have fun with one another. And so we often just go right to conversation and identifying, where I'm hurt or where she's hurt. We've had to have some of these recently, with different conversations and different circumstances that have left us incredibly fatigued, and maybe different like words or ideas that were tossed back and forth that just were not ideal, needed to be worked through, created a kind of a rift or a wound. So we just kind of like tackle those as they come. So that is an option. Obviously, there's risks involved, and it's a difficult thing to do. But if you're feeling like there's maybe an openness to receive that would be a good thing to do. If there's not an openness, or you've tried that a bunch, obviously it's not groundbreaking. So maybe you just tried that a whole lot of times already. Then I wouldn't like keep trying, and maybe shifting your focus and reorienting yourself in some of the ways that we've talked about may help to kind of dislodge some of that conflict from the center of the relationship, so that you can reconnect. And again, in that creating of that connection, that creating of that foundation, it very well may update the way that you're able to move through some of those conversations. Because when you're feeling connected and heard and understood and acknowledged, and you're pursuing fun and enjoyment with your spouse, and then there's something to be worked through, you just come at that a little differently. Spending 10 minutes a day talking about life and being curious about one another is another great way to kind of softly begin your re-engagement with fun and enjoyment of one another. Just kind of being curious and learning about the other person, asking questions, being open-ended with it, using an application or a game. They've got tons of cards out there for, of all from everywhere, different couples cards and things like that. So you can invest in something like that. Lots of opportunities, lots of options for re-engaging and engaging with your spouse, and attempting to connect with and update your ability to enjoy and have fun with them.
And I got all I need, and I got everything. I got you and me. All I want, I got all I need.
Keeping fun alive in your relationship is I don't like that. I don't like keeping fun alive is extremely important. That sounds so annoying. I'm annoyed. Be curious about your partner and where they're at currently. Talk through them. Talk through life with them. I hate this. Oh, my brain. Your partner may surprise. I don't want to say that either. Dang, this is rough. This is so rough. Of sparks